faculty, Professor Mary Kingley and Joanne, they're here. And we thank all of, all of you to be here this morning. So now I'll just, as a token of appreciation, want to formally welcome Professor Mary Kingley with a floral bouquet. Yeah, Professor Mary Kingley. Jao beta jao. We welcome our beloved director, Professor Mishra. This workshop on human factors, which is critical for in healthcare and also in other aspects of life, which will show us that how actually we can manage the human factors, which is actually unseen. We only experience it, but we do not actually think how to solve it. Whether it is taking a lead in developing one system that is called a leadership skills, or it is how quickly you can improve your outcome in thinking, which is a big process that we're going to touch upon, and how you can make yourself tough while working. So these are the three domains of this human factor workshop we are going to see today and tomorrow till afternoon. And with this, I'd like to invite Professor Mishra to formally welcome our delegates as well as Professor Mary Kingley in this endeavor of starting a new chapter of human factors at AIIMS. Sir.
Good morning, everyone. Morning and welcome, Mary. Mary Kiley is passionate about what she does. And this time, I think Vivek has not come with you? He's in the air. So she was introduced to us close to 5 years ago in March of 2011 when we invited her, and she was very kind to accept our invitation and conducted a workshop right in this boardroom here. And it was so impressive that how we can change the individuals and tell them what are the strengths in each one of us and what are the weaknesses, and overcome those weaknesses basically, and use our strength to achieve something. And because everybody has something to offer, everybody has some strengths, nobody is ideal on this earth. And that is what Mary introduced to us. And then she has been coming to Delhi. And have you gone to other parts of India also? Yeah, she has been. And what I feel that this activity should become part of our jobs here, because many of us can take stress at work, many of us cannot. So to obviate that problem, I think we need some guidance, and that is what I think Mary, when she conducts these workshops, you will realize that how important it is. Because when human factors, whether it's from the healthcare provider side and when even from the healthcare receiver side, both ways it matters. And that is what it highlights and focuses on. So these workshops, 3 of them have been lined up. As you see here today, this is thinking agility in medicine, then resilient doctor tomorrow in the afternoon, and then for women, mental toughness. I think that is what something is very important, that it is not so much physical you need mental toughness to deal with situations. And I'm really happy that she agreed to conduct these workshops, and we welcome her to AIIMS again. and what we want that it should be incorporated in not only for those like in the employment, but also sensitization of residents, student nurses, and other staff members, because this is needed in every sphere of healthcare organization when we see the importance of these. She is doing it for NHS for a long time, and there is a need in every healthcare system for such workshops. So I thank her again, and I thank Professor Rita Sood to be here, and everyone from the nursing side, and Dr. Bhui, Dr. Rajkumar Yadav, Parijat sitting here, and everyone that we need to make it more, people aware that they have the opportunity to attend these workshops, and also it will help in many ways in their performance of their daily work. Thank you so much, and I welcome you once again.
Okay, I don't know which one to use yet, but I'll see in a moment. Good morning, first of all. As Professor Misery kindly said, I'm going to do 3 workshops, and the first one this morning is going to be on thinking agility. Some of you may not even know what that means at the moment, and I will explain that to you. But can I thank you all, first of all, for coming this morning? The very first thing I want to say, right, and it's a fairly new concept in India at the moment, although it's gaining more momentum as time goes on, human factors. Human factors at the moment is not mandatory on anyone's agenda, but it will become mandatory. It is very, very important, both in England and Ireland, but here at the moment, it's just by choice. It's not something that you choose to do. I will say now, and I won't make any apologies for this, those people that begin to understand human factors and the importance of it in medicine will be ahead. They will be ahead of the others who decide that this isn't an important subject. Trust me, I've been teaching this subject for 25 years, and there is nothing more important than how you use your brain. And really, this is what we're talking about. Okay? Now, one of the most important things to do in training is to get past what I would call a negative mindset. Now, you will see 2 pictures of 2 monkeys. The first monkey is scratching his head. And what I'm really saying here is there are doctors, nurses, and healthcare people who don't know. They don't know. They're ignorant. They don't know what they need to know. Okay? So those people I like working with, because when you give them knowledge, they want to learn. So you move them from what I would call incompetence to competence. But then there's the other doctor, the other monkey, the one with his fingers in his ears. There are lots of doctors, nurses, healthcare people who don't want to know. I don't want them in my training room. And I'll be very honest about that. Right? You will come across 2 types of people. People who want to learn and people who don't want to learn. The most important thing about human factors and thinking is that I need you in the room. I need you open-minded. Okay? Because if you're not in the room and you don't take this on board and you haven't got the right mindset, then you're not going to learn anything about thinking. Okay? So we have got to keep an open mind here. All right? Open mind's absolutely essential for learning. Most of you, by the way, have one of these. Not necessarily the iPhone, but you have a mobile phone of some sort. And most of you probably think that that is the smartest device that you carry around with you. You couldn't be more wrong. The smartest device that you carry around with you is your brain. So it's not necessarily about using mobile phones, and most of us are glued to them every day. It's about how you use your brain. And this is what this first session is about. It's about what I call thinking agility, which I'll explain in a moment what that means. All right? But it's about using your brains important here. One of the things that we do with our brains, right? They're very exquisitely designed. We all know this. You're doctors and nurses, you know this. And your brain allows you to run on a kind of what I'd call autopilot, where you don't think. Because if you had to think for every single thing that you did every single moment of the day, you wouldn't get to work because you'd be very tired. Most of you got up this morning and you didn't think about eating breakfast, washing your teeth, whatever you do in your routine in the morning. You just do it. You're on autopilot. This is the way our brain works. But the problem is that conserves energy. But the problem is that's a double-edged sword. Why? Because some of us stop and we don't think. We stop thinking about our thinking. And this is where you can get mentally lazy. All right? The brain is designed to take what I call mental shortcuts. Okay? But unfortunately, sometimes we have to overrule those mental shortcuts and think in different ways when situations require that. Okay? And that's what it's all about in terms of today's world. You've got to be able to change and change quickly. Okay? Research does show that there are different types of thinking, and we're going to do a little test on you to see what way you think. Okay? We're going to do some colour profiling in a moment. There are different modes of thinking. But just as you prefer one way to think, there are 3 others. And sometimes we get lazy and we only continue to think the same way. Let me show you what I mean by that. Has everyone in this room, by the way, got pens and pieces of paper? Can we get pens and pieces of paper, please? Can you still hear me? You'll all need a pen and a piece of paper. You got a pen? You're going to need a pen. Got a piece of paper. Don't worry, by the way, about the slides either, because you're going to get a copy of them. Okay, so you don't need to take any notes down from the slides. I'll give you a copy of them. It's only if I say something that is important to you and it's not on the screen, then that you won't get a copy of that, obviously, unless you see this video. All right, everybody got a pen and a piece of paper? See the gentleman at the back? You can move up if you want. You know, I'm not that frightening. Come on. Move yourselves up. Otherwise, I'll send the blonde down to you. She'll usher you up. You're a brave man, because I would have been them down in a minute. Let's just bear with everybody here. Everybody gets pens and pieces of paper? Okay? Now, I mentioned that your brain works on autopilot. And one of the things that I want you to be very, very aware of is that we sometimes get very lazy mentally. And this is why you have to start thinking about your thinking. Okay, so it's self-awareness of your thought process. Now, what I'd like you to do with your pen at the moment, I'd like you to sign your name the way you normally sign your name. So if you're asked to sign your name, just sign your name on a piece of paper now. Everybody do this. Everybody sign their name? Give me a nod. Yep. Okay, now do it with the other hand. You can see it's not as easy. I see a lot of you taking twice as long to sign your name with the other hand. That is what I'm going to talk about in a moment or two. That's called a preference. The same way you have a way of signing with one hand and then you've a way of signing with the other, that's a different preference. And some of you don't like the alternative preference because it takes longer, it's slower, it's not as legible as the first signature. What if I told you that you had to use that hand all week? Everything that you were going to write for the next week, you have to use that hand. That would slow you down. That would cause you stress. You would be really frustrated, probably by this afternoon, never mind the end of the week. That is exactly what it's like when you're asked to think differently. It doesn't feel natural. But one of the things that you must do in today's world is actually get comfortable being uncomfortable and thinking differently, because sometimes different situations call for different thinking. And that is exactly what thinking agility is about. And I'm going to show you how you can learn this. Every single person in this room has the ability to use different types of thinking. It's just that a lot of you are used to one or two types and you get lazy with the others because it's like writing with that other hand. Okay? Now, very, very famous guy called Einstein, we all know him. He said thinking is hard work. That's why so few people do it. And it's true. People can get very mentally lazy. It's easier to wait to be told what to do than to have to think, what should I do? And then marry into that doing the right thing and making sure that you're competent to know what you're doing. Okay, but a lot of people get what I would call the lizard brain and they wait to be told what to do. Those people that wait in medicine will be left behind. And this is why this human factors, or soft skills as I sometimes call it, this will be the edge that will get you ahead. I can tell you now, and I'm not suggesting that any of you do this, because I think there's more need in India than there is in the UK. You won't get positions across the world if you're not good at human factors. That's a fact. Because the doctors, and I know I still teach a lot of this in England as well, but I can tell you now, you haven't a chance of improving your career without human factors. No matter how technically brilliant you are, you will need this. Because communication skills right now in this era has gone to the top of the tree in terms of importance. Okay? So whilst it's not mandatory yet, it will be at some stage. Okay? Because they've just realized the importance of this. So, what is thinking agility? Well, here's the definition of it. Okay? Thinking agility is the ability to consciously shift your thinking. Okay? Whenever the situation requires it. It's about deliberately using all of your different thinking modes. Okay? Now, here's the problem, and this is why this stuff's important, and I'll keep going back to this. 40% of malpractice suits, and I know that litigation in India is at an all-time high, it's failure to diagnose properly. It's rarely system errors. It's normally to do with thinking. There is huge research on this that proves that people are making mistakes because they're not actually thinking properly at the time. And that's what's causing some of the mistakes. It's not necessarily all accurate or technical errors. Life-death, doctors have to make life-death decisions every day. And patient relationships are huge. The busier the operating theatre or the ER room gets, the more important it is that doctors need to be conscious about their thinking. And nurses. It's not just the doctors, it's doctors and nurses. In fact, it's anyone who works in a hospital. It's the healthcare staff as well. Thinking problems can be avoided by at least being aware of them. So it's this skill they called metacognition, thinking about your thinking. All right, and it can lead to you not making as many mistakes as you might without the awareness. Now I'm just going to go through these briefly to show you the different types of thinking mistakes that doctors or nurses can make when they are doing their jobs. Okay, so just to show you that this is linked very clearly to what you do. First of all, there's a thinking error called anchoring bias. That's where a doctor locks on to a diagnosis too early and he fails to adjust his decision even though new information comes on board. So a specific thinking error is one called anchoring bias. This is why you got to keep an open mind and understand that your thinking might not necessarily be correct. There's another one called availability bias. What you already know, thinking that a recent presentation has happened in the present situation. Another one called confirmation bias. I'm just going to quickly go through these because you can look at these in your own time. That's looking for evidence to support a preconceived opinion. So you've already decided what's wrong and you go looking for the evidence to prove it, rather than looking for information maybe to prove that, well, maybe that's not what it is. It's diagnosing really too early, looking for something that you've decided you think's wrong and that may not be correct. Doctors make life-death decisions every day, so it's very, very important that your thinking is correct. There's another one called diagnostic momentum. That's accepting a previous diagnosis without having sufficient skepticism. I see so many cases on the medical legal teams that are doing training and the litigation cases where doctors have diagnosed incorrectly, diagnosed too early, missed something, and all of a sudden the patient is seriously ill and the patient dies. And then all of a sudden you get sued for that. It's a very dangerous job if your thinking's not correct. Then there's another bias called overconfidence bias, where you're relying on your own ability, your intuition and your judgment, and you're not looking at the facts in front of you. Because as far as you're concerned, you're the doctor, you know best. Doctors can be, in many instances, I've met the most loveliest doctors on the planet. I've also met some of the most arrogant doctors on the planet. And we've got to watch that, okay? Because that doesn't help you do your job well. Arrogance can sometimes get in the way of good information. There's two other thinking errors. One's called premature closure. That's similar to confirmation bias, but you jump to conclusions and you think you decide what's wrong too early. Okay? And another one is what they call the search satisfying bias. There's lots of biases. And that's the eureka moment where you think, yep, I've got it, and you don't look any further. You don't take account of all the other pieces of information that may take you down a different way when you're doing your diagnosis. So this stuff is critical. It's really, really critical to know that your thinking could possibly be wrong. And if you want to get really, really good at your job, then you've got to learn how to improve the quality of your thinking. And thinking agility is about being open-minded and understanding that your thinking needs to be flexible and accurate. And then you will improve your decision-making process, which is something you do every single day. Doctors and nurses make decisions, hundreds of them a day. Okay? There's another one called optimism bias. Sometimes your patients suffer from this more than you. Most people don't think they're ever going to get cancer. They don't think they're going to be in a car crash. They don't think they're going to get divorced. And they overestimate their longevity. They think they're going to live forever. Optimists, believe it or not, are less likely to divorce, but more likely to remarry. Just a very funny one, Samuel Johnson said their remarriage is the triumph of hope over experience. I know the women have got that one. All right, the men, I'm going to be very sarcastic here. The men just take a moment longer, okay, when it comes to that. Even around the expectations of chemotherapy. This is why Breaking Bad News is a course that every single person needs to know about. You need to know how to get the patient to understand exactly what you're saying, because some of them will have the thinking trap of optimism bias, and they're not actually hearing what you're telling them despite the seriousness of their illness. So this is a little study that was done after talking to doctors about chemotherapy. The patients were asked, how likely did you think the chemo would cure your cancer? Now, what do you think would have been the average here? They were asked, very likely to cure it, to don't know whether it's going to cure it or not. Which one do you think people will generally say? Which one? Very likely. Now, here's the statistics. 69% not at all likely of lung cancer chose the first three. Most people are very optimistic about their diagnosis. 81% with colon cancer still chose the first three. And yet the reflecting mistake is that the expectations of treatment, some patients are mistakenly optimistic in the face of a terrible prognosis. So it is absolutely critical when you're breaking bad news, particularly when you know that the prognosis is not very good, that you get the patient, even when they've got optimism bias, to believe you. And this is very difficult, I know, because most of the family come with the patients in India. So not only have you got to get the thinking right in the patient, but you also have a whole members of family to deal with as well. And that puts a lot of pressure on. So you really got to be on this to do it well.
There is a question here.
Okay.
There is a lot of culture difference in patient population in India and UK. For example, if we suspect a cancer in a, I'll use this. If we have suspicion of cancer, diagnosis of cancer in a patient, most of the times family members, close ones would say that don't tell the patient. And this is fairly common. Subsequently, they do come to know when they undergo treatment, they undergo surgery, we explain to them about what is going to happen, whether we are going to do mastectomy or we are going to do colectomy. But in the first instance, they would ask us not to divulge to the patient about the diagnosis. So that is something very significant here, and many a times we actually directly do not tell the patient. Patient does come to know when he is going to cancer center, receiving radiotherapy, and when they are getting better and recovering from it, they don't mind it. So that is something which I would like you to deal with. How do we deal with this situation? It is very unlike of UK, because I can give an example. When I first went to overseas for an assignment, an Irish lady came to me with a breast cancer, and she said, whatever you do, I don't want to lose my breast. So you plan your treatment accordingly. She already had an advanced disease, so we did something where we didn't remove her breast. That was easy decision for me as a surgeon, because otherwise I would have opted for mastectomy, because there were already lymph nodes in axilla. But in India, it doesn't happen that way. We explain to the patient, say for half an hour, for 15 minutes. At the end, they would come out and say, whatever you think appropriate, do that. So generally, patients are not making decisions for themselves, unlike UK. So these are the two scenarios which you might like to think about and say, how do we go with that?
Okay. Right. You won't be surprised by this, but I've got some very strong opinions on this. Yes, England's very different. From an English perspective, from England-Ireland perspective, Western perspective, the general rule and the way we teach the doctors there is that
you give the patient the full information. I can actually speak from personal, I don't usually say this very often, but I can actually speak from personal situation. In the year 2000, which is now 15 years ago, I had cancer. Okay, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a 2.5-inch tumor, and I didn't know whether or not I was going to live. So I can actually tell you from a personal perspective as well. And the first thing that I wanted to know from the doctor, and this is 15 years ago, this is not even now, I would want to know everything. And even 15 years ago, the surgeon sat down with me and he told me exactly what they knew, everything. He even said to my face, and I actually wanted this information, he says, we don't know how big the tumor is. We don't know if the tumor has spread. 2 things you will need straight away will be an MRI and a CT scan. He says, once we know how big the tumor is and we can assess it, he says, then we can make decisions about what will be your treatment. But he gave me the full information. He did not tell me straight to my face, you are going to be okay. He told me straight, we don't know until we do some investigations. So I was rushed in very, very quickly to get the CT scan and the MRI scan. Then I had to wait, I think it was near enough a week, 7 days. I was brought back in again to the surgeon, and he sat down and he gave me the 3 options. And he said, really, what I want to do straight away, I want to do surgery. He says the surgery will happen within 3 weeks. This will be the date that I can do the surgery. And he went through all the options with me. Now, my decision-making process at the time was, I was at the time, now you're all going to know what age I am. Let's just say I was in my early 30s. And I says, look, I just want to live. Just do whatever you have to do. I want to live. I don't want to die. That's no matter what you have to do, I just want to live. So I went for the full surgery. Then I had to wait 11 days to find out whether or not, I didn't have to have chemo. I was very lucky. The operation got it all and it was contained. But I had to have lymph nodes removed, and I had to wait to see whether the lymph nodes clear. But at that time, the most important thing to me was that the doctor give me full information. I think and I know India is slightly different, but I really do believe that part of the problem and the shock that patients experience later when the diagnosis goes wrong is that they never got a chance to mentally take the information from the beginning. And worse than that, when you do tell them that the prognosis isn't good, that you may die, then they think you told them lies earlier. That can go against you. So I personally think that you need to be very sympathetic and give people as much information at the earliest stage that you possibly can so that you manage expectation. Now, that may go against your policy in India of not telling them everything. But unfortunately, if it was me, I wouldn't be very happy if that happened to me. I would want the full information. But as I say, there is a cultural thing going on here. I totally get that. But I think that managing expectation is huge. And I think if you deliver the message, it's not, you know what part of the problem is? It's not necessarily the coldness or the harshness of the prognosis that you're given. It's how the doctor tells the patient. That's the problem. I mean, if I just come up, I'm just going to do this really, really harshly. Raj, I'm going to do it to you because you're not going to take it too personally. And I just say, I don't think, you've got colon cancer and it's spread all through your body and I'm not sure whether you've got more than 6 months to live. If you do that to somebody, expect a riot. Expect the family to come in and have a riot. You can't do that. You've got to deliver it in a way to say, look, this situation, it's not looking good. Here's what we may have to do. But right now at the moment, this is very serious. You are critically ill. And you would even do it slower than that. You'd take the patient away into a side room and you'd let them, they might be upset. You might let them have to have their moment and say, look, we're going to do everything we can, but I'm going to tell you that you're very seriously ill here. And your voice tone needs to change. And I know when you have, we see the cues. We see the cues of people. We see, like in India or in England, doctors see patients maybe 100 a day, 150 a day. Over here, I think you have to do, what, 300 or more? So there's always pressure on you to hurry up for the next patient, but you got to watch. You got to be very, very careful with the people who are critically ill. But my personal view is I would give them as much information as I could, as early as I could, so that they can start to manage their expectation. Same with the relatives. You need to be straight with relatives, otherwise relatives think you're the most important person on the planet, you're going to save them, and then when it comes to this age, I've watched your newspapers, I've seen where people have come to AIIMS, and I've seen this in the newspaper, where doctors have told them the truth, the family didn't like it, they then go to the private sector hospital, who say, well, no, actually, we might be able to fix you. They then take them down an expensive route of treatment. They can't fix them. And before they get to critical stage, they refer them back to AIIMS, and you guys take the statistic of the death. I've seen that in the newspapers. That's not right. That is a system error. That's a system error which needs to be addressed. My personal view is tell the patient as much as possible to manage expectation and kill this optimism bias, because that's a thinking area. All right? I say that, but I understand that there's a training implication behind it, because it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So breaking bad news should be a critical human factor course. Okay? Because you can't do it wrong either. That would do more damage. All right? Does that answer the question a little bit?
Not quite, but what my question was, most of the families was asked us, don't divulge to the patient. And patients somehow also are comfortable with that. They don't want to know a bad news.
In England, I remember, I'll tell you what happened in my case, right? I happened to be down in Dublin at the time, and my doctor was in the north of Ireland. So if you can imagine, I would have been in Mumbai, and my mum was in Delhi, and the doctor was in Delhi. And the doctor told my mother before he told me. I ate the face off the doctor. I says, how dare you? How dare you tell my mother? How dare you put her in that situation? I am the patient. You tell me. I tell my mother. I deal with it. You do not put that worry on my mother. So it was the opposite of what would happen here.
Yeah, here it's just the reverse.
It's completely the reverse. See?
First of all, everyone wants to hear a good news. And if we don't have one, they don't want patient to know. They said, okay, tell us. And doctor,
It's the opposite in England.
So that's why I said it's a cultural
It's the
difference.
opposite.
And patients are also happy. If you don't tell them, in my last 35 years at this institute, none of the patient has come back and told me, why didn't you tell me?
Right. Well, I ain't going to argue with that. I'm not going to argue with that. However, then if you're not going to tell the patient, I would make sure that you tell the most senior relative and give them the full facts.
Yeah,
you need to keep yourself covered.
If it is wife, it's the husband.
That's fine.
If it is mother, it is son. If it is son, it is parents. So that's okay.
This is the bit that really kills me, and this will make you laugh. My husband will be here in second, not first. He won't be making any decisions about whether I'm in the hospital or not. In England, it's completely different.
That's right.
Completely different, okay?
Cultural factor, because family takes a lot of responsibility here.
Yeah. Yes.
We will do it gradually.
That's fine. As long as you give it to the family, and as long as you give it to the most senior member, but I would be saying to you to give them the full information, and then discuss with them, if it's cultural, how much information the actual patient needs to hear. In England, I'm sorry, it's completely different. You tell the guidance is that you give the patient the full information.
There is hardly a patient who comes to the outpatient alone.
I know.
Hardly a patient.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, if you had something like cancer, you wouldn't go on your own. I didn't go on my own. To be honest with you, I did bring my husband with me to the, who was sitting outside, but he was sitting outside. He didn't come into the doctor with me. I actually said, no, I want to go in here alone. But he was out there for support. You know, if you've got a serious illness like that, you're not going to go anywhere on your own. It's not really wise that you have to take, because the shock sometimes of the information that you're given. And I actually was told down the phone, which was really crazy, whilst I was at work.
I think the more important thing what you mentioned is it is not the information, it is how you give it.
Correct.
I think that is much more important, and these days, I don't know whether you have seen some of the news which is coming out that doctors are being thrashed
Yeah.
even upon telling the prognosis. And if they are not able to do much, again they are thrashed physically.
Yeah.
And
same
a lot
here.
of this is coming in last 6 months. And you are right that the way they are telling, maybe they are giving either false hope and then patient is not doing well. So that might be one of the reasons. And they expect, as you say, manage expectations.
It's the expectation
So
thing
I
that
think
is
that is
dangerous.
what has to be emphasized much more to Indian doctors practicing. And maybe at some stage we would invite you to
Do a break.
IMA meetings where large number of doctors, and this is happening to, not in AIIMS, but it is happening, and even at AIIMS, but there we have some reasons identified why some people fight or they become little aggressive when patients have not done well. So there are reasons for it. Some of them we have identified, but in practice now I'm getting every day one news that this happened at one hospital or other hospital. So managing expectation is really a very important aspect.
Yeah.
There's an empathetic tone, I think that you mentioned. Tone.
That's what she says. How you give break a bad news. So that is something not very bluntly. You have to manage, and that is something which we need to learn.
I think in medical colleges, and this is my personal view on this, I think in medical colleges, 2 courses in human factors that are absolutely, should be compulsory. Number 1, how to conduct the medical interview. That's the first meeting with the patient or the relatives, and how to gather information and how to speak to them through the medical interview. And the second absolutely compulsory course in mine is breaking bad news. How to deal with people's emotions. Because sometimes we're not good at that. Those would be 2 courses that I would put on every single medical curriculum across every college in India. And they are human factors. To be honest with you, I could have come here and done one of those courses and probably should have, and the next time I will. But because I thought they were more, well, they are more for the medical students, but I'm sure that there are doctors and nurses that are past the student stage that also still need them. Okay? I also did a course, should doctors apologize? That's a bit controversial, particularly in, a situation where litigation is at its highest. And the minute you admit to the mistake, my God, you could have an avalanche of litigation on your head. So that's a real controversial subject. But there is also proof that when a doctor apologizes, people sue less. There's also proof about that. So it's quite a strange situation. But I remember saying this in a conference at the Medical Legal Action Group. We did a conference on this. I was killed for basically giving out the message that doctors should apologize. Not in India. Definitely not in India. So you have a different set of issues going on here. Look, we cannot come over here and compare what we do in England to what you do here. I am not going to stand at the front of the room and say to you that your situation, if you just did this, everything would be resolved. The numbers here are mind-blowing. The pressures that you have to deal with are mind-blowing. All I can do is share with you good little practice tips and hope that you can fit this into your system, which needs a huge change. The numbers are your biggest issue. It really is. So you have your own set of challenges here. What I'm going to give you as much information as I can from the English perspective, but obviously that has to be put into the cultural aspects of India. All right? But the research does say if you apologize, you get less litigation. However, I understand your situation. Right? But the how is definitely something that is transferable and can be taught. Okay, the how you break bad news, the how you speak to patients. So, One of the things that I will say here, and this is generally not just for doctors, but across the world in terms of leadership, there was a very big report done recently, and they said that there are 3 gaps in skills for leaders. So those of you that are interested in either nurse leadership or leadership in general, these are the 3 things that they say are missing at the moment. One of them is empathy. And empathy is that ability to get into someone else's shoes and understand where they're coming from. There are 4 levels of empathy. Listening is the lowest level. Reading the body language is the 2nd level. Being open to diversity is the 3rd level. And getting into their head and into their shoes is the 4th level. People don't even know what empathy is. Empathy is a skill where you can really listen and understand the other person, but listening is the lowest level. Secondly, and this is a huge one, collaboration. Doctors, nurses must work better in teams. Okay, how you work together. Arguments with colleagues. I've seen situations, for example, in England, never mind India, where we had a junior Czechoslovakian doctor, 23 years old, just come into the country. She's going to be moving through the hospital, so she's in her stage and just out of the medical school into the next, I think it was the registrar stage, can't remember, but she was quite young. She was a junior doctor. And I had 2 senior midwives, right? Now here's a situation. The junior doctor wanted to give the patient an epidural. The midwives didn't. So we are now sitting with a situation, patients waiting, and the doctor and the midwife, 2 women, are arguing. They argued for an hour and a half, whilst the poor patient was waiting in pain, epidural or no epidural. This is the type of thing that you cannot allow. That should have been teamwork. And you had a situation where the older woman was not going to take the advice from the junior woman. You had the situation where the doctor was trying to overrule the nurse, but the nurse had seniority because they were more senior in the hospital. So that was, in that problem, you had gender issues going on, and you had rank issues going on, and you had a complete lack of empathy because they weren't thinking of the impact of the patient. So one of the biggest things that you have to learn to do very quickly is collaborate and work together. All right? The third thing that's missing here is this ability to think on your feet, thinking agility, which I'm taking you through. Okay? So those are the 3 gaps in global leadership at the moment. Now, that's okay, no problem. We live in an era, by the way, where everything is governed by computers. And I'm going to move on quickly through this to get to this little test. Everything can be done online. Okay? So get very, very sharp with this. Thinking and training is all getting faster. Faster, faster, faster. There's as much information as you can deal with. But one of the things you got to do is sort out what you want to learn. Okay? So we're moving in this era where everything's done differently. Okay? Now, here's the key question. If the way we do our work is changing, and it is changing, then it must also follow that the skills to do the work is changing. And this, so how does this affect you as doctors? I can tell you now that communication has gone to the top of the agenda because of this stuff. Okay? You've got a situation where back in the 18th century, the farmers had all the power. Then we move into the factory stage, then we move into the information age. We're in a stage now where the ability to influence, the ability to get people to cooperate with you has become the #1 skill. Influence and cooperation is absolutely the most important skill. Not information. Information is no longer power. Google will always be smarter than you. Patients can now Google their problems and read through the internet. Okay? So we're now past this information age where you think you've got all the power because you've got knowledge. No, you haven't. It's people that can get people to cooperate with them, that can empathize, that can connect, that can influence. This is why this skill is the #1 skill. All right? Now, what they also say here is that the world is moving at a furious pace. And what's really interesting here, they're mentioning China and India. Huge, you're becoming huge. It basically means that an advanced world continues to grow, the greatest rewards will go to those people that can move fast. That's why I'm telling you that communication skills will give you the advantage, because you'll be able to think faster and you'll be able to think more strategically than other people. Okay? It says the first group of people who develop a whole new mind, who master what they call high concept and high touch abilities, will be at the forefront. You will have the edge. People who do not have these skills will be behind. Okay? Two things. High concept, I was going to tell you what high concept is in a moment. High concept is what I'd call big picture skills. You're able to join all the dots. You can see the bigger picture, not just the detail. You can read the trends of what's happening. I always talk about three things: hindsight, insight, and foresight. Hindsight, everybody has hindsight. There's no advantage. Insight is being able to think on your feet in the moment, in the present tense. Foresight is to see it coming. Doctors and leaders need foresight. They need to see it coming, and they need to be able to join all the dots and see the bigger picture. That's what we mean when we talk about high concept abilities. High touch is empathy. That's that ability to say it correctly and to influence people and to get not just me and you transfer information, but me and you get a connection. People who are able to do that, they will be at an advantage. Okay? Hesitation and procrastination. Those that wait, that don't think this is important, they're going to be left behind. What they're saying here is that hesitation and procrastination are the enemy. This age that we're in now, Modi talks about this all the time when I'm watching him on TV. All the time. Talks about thinking, and he talks about the bigger picture and where India's going, and this is India's time. This is Modi's language. He uses this stuff all the time. It says the new age glitters with opportunity, but it is unkind to the slow of foot, that's people who are slow, as it is to the rigid of mind, that's people with closed minds. This period of time that we're in will not reward slowness, hesitation, and stubbornness. It won't. So it's time to open your mind and learn faster. Okay? This is what high concept is. It's the ability to detect patterns and opportunities. By the way, you'll get these slides, so don't worry about taking down all these notes, honestly. And it's about the ability to sell a story, to tell people a story that combines, joins all the dots. If any of you have ever watched Steve Jobs' Stanford speech, he talks about connecting the dots. That's well worth taking a look at. Being able to combine all the things together. This is what I call a high concept. High touch is this ability to empathize with others. This is this soft skills connection stuff. This is gone straight to the top of the communication agenda. Trust me, I am training people all over the world in this stuff, in communication skills. People think, oh, communication skills, not that big a deal. It's a very big deal. Okay? And to understand the subtleties of human interaction. That's the emotional stuff. Okay? So, you ready for this little test? Before we start here, what time is it now? What time are we having the tea break at? What time is it, Raj? 10:40. Do you want to take, because I think there's a tea break here at 10:45, do you want to take the tea break first and then we get straight into the test afterwards? You want to do a test first? Everybody doing the test? Oh, right. We'll move on then. All right. Okay. All right. Take a look at the chart here. Right? Now, if you're colorblind, you cannot do this. Okay? Take a look at this chart and say the color instead of the word. So, for example, that should be green, yellow, red, black, green, blue. And this should be red, blue, blue, red, blue, red. I can say it very easily, by the way. Blue, black, green, yellow, black, green. So see if your brain can read the color as opposed to say the word. So for example, look at this one. Instead of saying black, say yellow. Instead of saying purple, say red. If your brain easily allows you say the colour, you have a tendency for what we call being right-brained. If your brain forces you to read the word, you have a tendency to be more left-brained. One of the things you need to understand about yourself in thinking is, are you right-brained or left-brained? And that's what we're going to work out now in this test. Okay? Next thing. 2 parts of the brain in terms of a model of thinking. There's those people who use what I call the cerebral part of the brain to think. Those people who use the limbic part of the brain to feel. So some people are very logical, some people are very emotional. Okay, that's also something that you should know about yourself. Are you more logical or are you more emotional? Okay? And then we call the right side and the left side. It's just a model for thinking, by the way. It does not mean your brain is split in 4 parts. I don't need to say that to doctors, I don't think. All right, it's just a model for thinking. Okay? So, before we do these little profiles, by the way, there is no right or wrong profile. There is just understanding your profile. Okay? So what I want to do at this stage is I want to take one of these, take one and pass on. Everybody needs 1 copy. Take 1 and pass on. Oh. Give them to the back, Joan. Yep. Some more. I hope it's enough. Aye, just as well. 20. Supposed to be 25 in here. 25 my foot. Up to about 100. Can I just ask, has there been passed out? Have we enough? Keep them moving. There's more coming down. Has everybody signed the register for attending today so we get a list of the names? Yes? No response. You don't want me to shout. There's another one. I need 1. In fact, I don't need any. Give them that one as well. I can just borrow one at the front. Everybody got one? Any spares going? There's a couple more needed. There's a couple more at the back. Any more, Joan? Joan, see our yellow folder? Right. We need to keep 1 copy. Well, no, we're more back at the house. Is there, nobody else got one? Could somebody... Yeah. Could somebody double up with somebody? Because all you need to do is write down the one that... If you write it down... Right, let me... How many people do not have one of these? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you don't have one. So 3 people, 4 people at the back? 5, 6? Right. Sit beside someone else that has this sheet. Okay? And whenever you look at the 2 words, you just write down the one that you agree with. Okay? You'll see in a moment. You'll be able to do this even without a sheet. Okay? Now. Right. What I want you to do, and you can choose this mentally. You'll need a sheet of paper and a pen, by the way. You'll need to write down some words. What I want you to do is go down through each of these words. Just let me borrow this for 1 second. You will see 24 pairs of words on this page. Okay? So the first pair of words is intuitive, which means you use your intuition. Okay? The second word is objective. You need facts and figures. You're very objective when you're making decisions. What you need to do is choose the word that describes you as you are. So are you more intuitive or are you more objective? Okay? Now, you could be both, but which one are you more of? It's a forced choice exercise. The words are not opposites. You could look at a pair of words and go, I'm not any of those. But even if you're only a tiny little bit, you must choose one. So you're going to circle 24 words here. You have to choose between each pair. Okay? Now I'm going to go down slowly through this as well, but I'm giving you the meanings. So either choose intuitive or objective. Circle it. Which one are you more of? Intuitive means you use your intuition and your gut. Objective means you need facts and figures before you make decisions. Choose one. Okay? Next one is quantitative and synthesizer. They'll be able to move along at your own speed in a moment after we get through some of these difficult ones. Quantitative means you're very exacting with measures. You know, you would say it's 10:14 as opposed to it's 10:15. So you're very into quantities and measures. You're very exacting in your thoughts. Synthesizer means that you bring lots of things together like a blender to come up with an idea. As opposed to breaking it down, you gather all these concepts together for one idea. So you synthesize as opposed to analyze. Okay? So which one are you? Are you more quantitative or are you more synthesizer? Circle one. You will need to do this, sir, so you have to pick one or the other. No paper. Joan, can we possibly see if we can get, a couple more? Next one is holistic. No, next one's harmonizing or persistent. Harmonizing means you keep the peace. Persistent means you're very persistent in your manner. Now, you don't need them all explained, so just move down through the list and shout if there's any that you want me to explain to you. Direct is go straight to it. Direct. Sequential means you do it in a particular sequence. Which is that spiritual? Spiritual means you very much, you know the meaning, the deeper meaning. You know that one. You're Indian. I don't need to explain. My God, I don't need to explain spiritual here. So the English are the ones that have the difficulty with that. Yes, but they should understand the word. No, I get that. If you need an explanation to any of them, just call out the number. Because of the English translation, I can understand you might have some difficulty. Number 4 is holistic versus intellectual. Holistic means you see the whole body as opposed to just the part. So you see the big picture. And intellectual means you're extremely intelligent, that you pride yourself on being intellectual, smart. Open-minded is, well, we can look at it this way, or we could look at it that way, or we could look at it that way, so you keep your options open, you're quite open-minded. And what was the other one? Trusting means you automatically trust people. You could be both, you see. So which one are you more of? Some of them are, it's a forced choice exercise. So some of them you'll go, I'm actually both of those, but you're only allowed to pick one. Yes? Realistic versus detailed. Realistic is realistic's where you're very practical, very grounded. You get real. You don't imagine stuff. You want facts, figures, real. It's real. What was the other one? Detailed. Detailed means that you absolutely need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You need every piece of information before you make a decision. And again, you could be both. Sorry? Interpersonal. Interpersonal means you're very good at the communication skills. So that's the interpersonal stuff. You're very good at relationships. And imaginative means you're very good with your imagination. You're very, you can come up with new things and use your imagination. Which one? Responsive means you're quite quick to respond. So responsive means it's response, basically. Challenging means, what are you saying? What are you saying? I'm being challenging. Right. Well, challenging is a style where I challenge you. Responsive means I'm very open and I'm very quick to respond to you. You could be both. I think you should go with responsive. All right? Because you didn't challenge me, so go with that one. All right? Any others? Analytical means that you break things down, analysis, so you have to break it all down into pieces. Procedure means that you like to follow rules. Okay? Any others? Which one? Number 6. Right. Spiritual you've got, right? Simultaneous is that you're very good at doing lots of different things at the same time. If you've ever heard the term of multitasking, right? So you're good at multitasking. What's number 11? Technical is, for example, technical is somebody who's very good with all these buttons and things, right? That's not me, right? Structured is, we're doing this at 9 o'clock, we're doing this at 11 o'clock, we're doing this at 12 o'clock, we're doing this at 3 o'clock. You're quite structured in how you plan your day. There is a link. There is a link. But I'm structured, I'm not technical. I'm quite good at the planning, but don't ask me to work these machines. I don't even know how to work my own remote for the TV. Direct is when you're going to do something, you know the way you have all these different distractions, you go direct. Sequential means, right, hang on, we need to do this first, then this, then this. Yeah. So direct or 1, 2, 3 in a particular sequence. Realistic is mentally where you keep it real. You don't go too what they call overboard and imagine stuff. So it's real. What's the other word? Detailed means you need lots of different pieces of information. You don't like making decisions when you don't have all the facts. So it could be both. I think you're realistic. Because you wouldn't have hesitated to do detail. All right, everybody got it done? Are we finished? No, some people need more time. You must choose one of each. You cannot leave any out. So you should have circled 24 words. Are you expressive or curious? Are you very expressive or curious? I think you're creative. Sorry, it's creative. Creative means you can, yeah. Don't think you're expressive. Expressive is very expressive. I'm expressive. Yeah. All right, have we got it? Does anybody need more time? Please make sure you have completed every single one. You can't leave any out. All right? 1 minute. Which one? 23. What's the words? Empathic means you're very good with empathy. All right? Critical means you're quite critical and harsh in the way you deliver stuff. All right? Everybody got it? Right. Let's move on to the next stage. I am going to call out a series of colors. Okay? I want you to write the color in the margin. Just give me this a second. Right? So when I say, for example, intuitive yellow, objective blue, if you have circled intuitive, you're only interested in the words that you've circled. If you've circled intuitive, write yellow in the margin. If you've circled objective, write blue in the margin. So write the color in the margin, because you're going to count these colors up in a moment and it will be easier. Only record one color. You're only interested in the word that you circled. Don't worry about the other one. Okay, and write your colors in the margin. So we'll start again. Intuitive yellow, objective blue. So write down blue in the margin. Write down the color in the margin of the word that you circled. Okay? So I'll do it again. Intuitive yellow, objective blue. Next one. Quantitative blue, synthesizer yellow. Quantitative blue, synthesizer yellow. Write the color in the margin. Okay? Harmonizing red, persistent green. Holistic yellow, intellectual blue. Logical blue, planner green. Spiritual red, simultaneous yellow. Direct blue, sequential green. Open-minded yellow, trusting red. Responsive red, challenging blue. Analytical blue, procedural green. Technical blue, structured green. Enthusiastic red, curious yellow. Top of the page. Receptive red.
As our international faculty, Professor Mary Kingley and Joanne, they're here, and we thank all of you to be here this morning. So now I'll just, as a token of appreciation, want to formally welcome Professor Mary Kingley with a floral bouquet. Yeah, Professor Mary Kingley. Jao beta jao. We welcome our beloved director, Professor Mishra. This workshop on human factors, which is critical in healthcare and also in other aspects of life, which will show us that how actually we can manage the human factors, which is actually unseen. We only experience it, but we do not actually think how to solve it. Whether it is taking a lead in developing one system that is called a leadership skills, or it is how quickly you can improve your outcome in thinking, which is a big process that we're going to touch upon, and how you can make yourself tough while working. So these are the three domains of this human factor workshop we are going to see today and tomorrow till afternoon. And with this, I'd like to invite Professor Mishra to formally welcome our delegates as well as Professor Mary Kingley in this endeavor of starting a new chapter of human factors at AIIMS. Sir.
Good morning, everyone. Morning and welcome, Mary. Mary Kiley is passionate about what she does. And this time, I think Vivek has not come with you? He's in the air. So she was introduced to us close to 5 years ago in March of 2011 when we invited her, and she was very kind to accept our invitation and conducted a workshop right in this boardroom here. And it was so impressive that how we can change the individuals and tell them what are the strengths in each one of us and what are the weaknesses, and overcome those weaknesses basically, and use our strength to achieve something.
As our international faculty, Professor Mary Kingley and Joanne, they're here, and we thank all of you to be here this morning. So now I'll just, as a token of appreciation, want to formally welcome Professor Mary Kingley with a floral bouquet. Yeah, Professor Mary Kingley. Jao beta jao. We welcome our beloved director, Professor Mishra. This workshop on human factors, which is critical in healthcare and also in other aspects of life, which will show us that how actually we can manage the human factors, which is actually unseen. we only experience it, but we do not actually think how to solve it. Whether it is taking a lead in developing one system that is called a leadership skills, or it is how quickly you can improve your outcome in thinking, which is a big process that we're going to touch upon, and how you can make yourself tough while working. So these are the three domains of this human factor workshop. We are going to see today and tomorrow till afternoon. And with this, I'd like to invite Professor Mishra to formally welcome our delegates, as well as Professor Mary Kingley in this endeavor of starting a new chapter of human factors at AIIMS. Sir.
Good morning, everyone. Morning and welcome, Mary. Mary Kiley is passionate about what she does. And this time, I think Vivek has not come with you? He's in the air. So she was introduced to us close to 5 years ago in March of 2011, when we invited her, and she was very kind to accept our invitation and conducted a workshop right in this boardroom here. And it was so impressive that how we can change the individuals and tell them what are the strengths in each one of us and what are the weaknesses, and overcome those weaknesses basically, and use our strength to achieve something.
As our international faculty, Professor Mary Kingley and Joanne, they're here, and we thank all of you to be here this morning. So now I'll just, as a token of appreciation, want to formally welcome Professor Mary Kingley with a floral bouquet. Yeah, Professor Mary Kingley. Jao beta jao. We welcome our beloved director, Professor Mishra. This workshop on human factors, which is critical in healthcare and also in other aspects of life, which will show us that how actually we can manage the human factors, which is actually unseen. We only experience it, but we do not actually think how to solve it. Whether it is taking a lead in developing one system that is called a leadership skills, or it is how quickly you can improve your outcome in thinking, which is a big process that we're going to touch upon, and how you can make yourself tough while working. So these are the three domains of this human factor workshop. We are going to see today and tomorrow till afternoon. And with this, I'd like to invite Professor Mishra to formally welcome our delegates, as well as Professor Mary Kingley in this endeavor of starting a new chapter of human factors at AIIMS. Sir.
Good morning, everyone. Morning and welcome, Mary. Mary Kiley is passionate about what she does. And this time, I think Vivek has not come with you? He's in the air. So she was introduced to us close to 5 years ago in March of 2011, when we invited her, and she was very kind to accept our invitation and conducted a workshop right in this boardroom here. And it was so impressive that how we can uh, change the individuals and tell them what are the strengths in each one of us and what are the weaknesses, and overcome those weaknesses basically, and use our strength to achieve something.
As our international faculty, Professor Mary Kingley and Joanne, they're here, and we thank all of you to be here this morning. So now I'll just, as a token of appreciation, want to formally welcome Professor Mary Kingley with a floral bouquet. Yeah, Professor Mary Kingley. Jao beta jao. We welcome our beloved director, Professor Mishra. This workshop on human factors, which is critical for in healthcare and also in other aspects of life, which will show us that how actually we can manage the human factors, which is actually unseen. We only experience it, but we do not actually think how to solve it. Whether it is taking a lead in developing one system that is called a leadership skills, or it is how quickly you can improve your outcome in thinking, which is a big process that we're going to touch upon, and how you can make yourself tough while working. So these are the three domains of this human factor workshop we are going to see today and tomorrow till afternoon. And with this, I'd like to invite Professor Mishra to formally welcome our delegates as well as Professor Mary Kingley in this endeavor of starting a new chapter of human factors at AIIMS. Sir.
Good morning, everyone. Morning and welcome, Mary. Mary Kiley is passionate about what she does. And this time, I think Vivek has not come with you? He's in the air. So she was introduced to us close to 5 years ago in March of 2011, when we invited her, and she was very kind to accept our invitation and conducted a workshop right in this boardroom here. And it was so impressive that how we can change the individuals and tell them what are the strengths in each one of us and what are the weaknesses, and overcome those weaknesses basically, and use our strength to achieve something.
As our international faculty, Professor Mary Kingley and Joanne, they're here, and we thank all of you to be here this morning. So now I'll just, as a token of appreciation, want to formally welcome Professor Mary Kingley with a floral bouquet. Yeah, Professor Mary Kingley. Jao beta jao. We welcome our beloved director, Professor Mishra. This workshop on human factors, which is critical for in healthcare and also in other aspects of life, which will show us that how actually we can manage the human factors, which is actually unseen. We only experience it, but we do not actually think how to solve it. Whether it is taking a lead in developing one system that is called a leadership skills, or it is how quickly you can improve your outcome in thinking, which is a big process that we're going to touch upon, and how you can make yourself tough while working. So these are the three domains of this human factor workshop. We are going to see today and tomorrow till afternoon. And with this, I'd like to invite Professor Mishra to formally welcome our delegates as well as Professor Mary Kingley in this endeavor of starting a new chapter of human factors at AIIMS. Sir.
Good morning, everyone. Morning and welcome, Mary. Mary Kiley is passionate about what she does. And this time, I think Vivek has not come with you? He's in the air. So she was introduced to us close to 5 years ago in March of 2011 when we invited her, and she was very kind to accept our invitation and conducted a workshop right in this boardroom here. And it was so impressive that how we can change the individuals and tell them what are the strengths in each one of us and what are the weaknesses, and overcome those weaknesses basically, and use our strength to